And we start to get into what I call the real nitty-gritties of what's happening with a person. There are things that I think are A things. These are things that if I was working for you, you expect me to do day in, day out. And I don't need to come to you, apart from maybe an appraisal, twice a year or whatever it is that you want to do with me. There are B things that I do for this guy. And they're things that I've got to talk it through with you. I go away and do it, and then I come back and you give me feedback on it. Very often where the issues come, when people say they can't make it, we've outgrown them, the business has moved on, I'll see things. And see things are things which are experiential in nature. In other words, you've got to do it with me. I've got to see you do it. You've got to model it for me. Like, for example, when I was an HR officer, I used to do union negotiations. Before I did my first union negotiation, I remember my boss saying to me, Chris, I can't tell you what's going to happen in the room with the guys. I can tell you what I think the agenda is, but you've got to watch me. And then I did it with him. 3 months after I started that process of being his apprentice, that little Harry Potter, with him, then I managed to get it. And then gradually I went through. My experience of that type of situation, where people say, we've outgrown them, it's those scenarios, and sometimes they've never actually seen it, they've never done it, so you can't expect them to sort of pick it up and go with it. I'm not saying that that answers the scenario. I'm just saying my experience says is that very often people can get left behind, that they weren't in the right rooms at the right stages, so they never quite got the big message that you were trying to get at. So that little delegation model could be one way of sort of unplugging or unblocking may be a problem. Does that sound sensible to people?
Yeah, one thing I'd like to sort of discuss is how you encourage people to move out of their comfort zone.
Right. Okay, fine. Wow, it's getting like Dr. Dunn here. Okay. I love this quote, so I thought I'd share it with you. And it's not just for us, it's for our people. The successful people that I've worked with have an understanding about that what they do dictates the outcome. Simple as that. So the more we think about what we're doing, what we're saying, where do we want to be on a day-to-day basis, it's highly likely that we're going to achieve the things that we want to achieve. If we can start to pass on that principle to the people about us, I think that's a pretty good phrase. Not to get into Dr. Dunn surgeries about every difficult conversation that you've all had, but 3 things that have hit me over the years. One is, difficult conversations very often, apparently, are difficult because we build them up in our minds that they're going to be difficult. And that it's always the lead up to that difficult conversation which is probably the worst bit. So difficult conversations don't have to be difficult. They become difficult because of the emotionality piece. I mean, the heart twangs go, when somebody talks about loyalty or length of service, and you can feel it all being dished on top of you, and you go, hang on, I'm a human being, I can't handle that. So you've got to somehow step back. And the process that I was mentioning a moment ago about trying to think about what is it that actually I am trying to do with this person. Don't go into the room or don't get involved in the discussion unless you're clear about what you want to achieve. Those conversations which happen sort of just off the cuff without any planning, from my experience, don't tend to necessarily be the best outcomes. Second thing is really think through the things that you want to try and get right. And the other one is always go down the route of having clear actions when you come out from those sessions. This is not Dr. Dunn surgeries, so I don't want to go through everything. There's lots and lots of stuff about how to do this. But what I think it's all about is facing issues. A good mate of mine said to me, Chris, it's funny, isn't it? If you let something go, it never seems to get better on its own. So early prevention is better than cure, I suppose, is the moral of the story. Have you ever seen a smart person do something really dumb? tell me, why does that happen?
Got too much on my plate. Distracted.
Yeah. I've seen it happen with people who, I worked with a great guy, but he was one flaw. He always wanted to be right. He always wanted to have the last word. And that's fine doing it with me, but with a customer, you know, you sort of put your crash helmet on and say, no, that's slightly emotion, pride, wanting to look great, not wanting to look silly, all of those things I see. One really great technique that I was given many years ago has bailed me out. When you feel that you can feel the emotion building, it could be in one of these difficult conversations, it could be in a negotiation, it could be in a trade union situation, and you feel yourself, you feel all these eyes focused on you, and you feel something happening, and it's not nice. This was the advice given to me. It's you've got to stop the emotion. Count to 5 inside your head. Just count to 5. That sort of pulls the cog out, as it were, over here. And then go, what would the adult Chris do? And you know, typically, when I've been under a lot of pressure and a lot of heat coming towards me, I've used that very simple technique because it makes you stand back, squeezes out the emotion, and then you can function. And I give that to you. That was given to me 30 years ago. So hopefully you've got it for 30 years. Oops. I've already covered that earlier on. There are just some things in business that you can't expect anybody in your team just to get. You've actually got to do it with them. And if you don't do it with them, do not be surprised if they underperform. So those are the things where if it's a sales meeting, for example, you might have hired a really successful salesperson with another company, but actually your company does it in a particular way. If they don't see you in action doing it in your style, in your company, don't expect them to do it in any other way other than the way that they know. Yeah? I thought we ought to put something in here on sort of bits and pieces of advice given to me over the years about rewards and incentives. It's a great temptation when you find somebody and you think, gosh, I need to keep them. It's a great temptation, it can be, in some circumstances, to give them too much too quick. I've certainly made that mistake over the years. And it's very difficult when you've done that to actually try and put things right. Because people always believe that what they got was the starting point, and now we're going to go on further forwards. So don't give too much too quickly. The other piece of advice that I've had from advisors when I've been trying to think about how do I organise rewards and incentives is just to think about the middle two things. What am I actually trying to do here with my team? What really is going to make a difference to my company? Am I trying to affect gross profit? Am I trying to affect customer satisfaction? Am I trying to affect sales? Am I trying to affect whatever it is? Being very clear on what the outcomes are, because that's what you're going to pay for. And linked into that is what behaviours do you want to drive? So if you know, you've got to be really careful about driving behaviours in your company which put one person or one team against another. And it's very easy to do that, especially when you're under pressure yourself in sales or whatever it might be. And the other thing, I suppose, which is quite obvious, but sometimes we miss out on, is that cash is only part of the whole process. As a sort of example of that, many, many years ago, I used to, at Christmas time, we've been through all the big things at the boardroom about what would we be doing at Christmas. And I started a very simple process. I used to buy 30 odd Christmas cards, one for everybody in the company, put a personal message on it. I used to put 50 quid in there, 5 tenors. And the whole idea was that that would be on the desk of everybody the day before Christmas, before we broke up. And the number of people who've said to me over the years, it wasn't just the cash, it was actually the action